Good morning and welcome to the Falcons Podcast. We are live on YouTube, but let us bring in our Facebook groups real quick. Nick, it looks like I picked the wrong day to sleep in. I feel like airplane. Wrong day to quit. Wrong week to quit drinking coffee.
Yeah,
Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. It is Free Agency Monday. My name is Scott Kennedy. I will be your host, and it is already off to a fast start. It really got started over the weekend, naturally. Nick, how are you doing, my friend?
Oh, surviving. Little guy woke me up at 2:50 last night and then did not go back to sleep. So luckily, really worked hard to get early to bed last night with the daylight savings time so I wouldn't be screwed with the timing, but got screwed anyway. So what can you do? But I've had plenty of coffee already this morning. I've already been up for a bit, so I'm raring to go.
It works a little backwards. I actually like the spring forward a little bit more when I have children and animals that get up at all hours, because it's almost like, okay, I can train my body to make them think at 7:30 instead of 6:30. When you fall back, you don't get to sleep in an extra hour. They're still getting up on their body clock time. So we've got a ton of news coming in already from last night, from this morning, regarding the quarterback position. And I want to keep a look on this Facebook page real quick. Apologies. And I don't know where to start, where the biggest news is. Should we start, with the Atlanta Falcons? And, it looks like Kirk Cousins will test free agency, and all the signs right now are pointing Kirk Cousins, Atlanta Falcons, Minnesota really trying to hang on there. And if they don't re-sign / extend, they take a pretty nasty cap hit from the void years. So they've got a lot of incentive to do that. But it sounds like Kirk Cousins to the Atlanta Falcons.
I'll believe it when I see it. Still, it's that time of year where a lot of things can still happen. But I know Minnesota's been trying. It sounds like Kirk really does want to go back to Minnesota, but they're just kind of having some issues with years and the guarantees and the structure of the contract. And I think, Minnesota, they were like the number 1 or number 2 team in the rating of the players, the ownership group, and all that stuff. But they are not still like the most wealthy ownership group out there, and I don't know if they have as much of a timeline incentive as the Falcons do under Arthur Blank to get it right. So I'm curious if he does actually hit the market, if there's any chance for him to go back to Minnesota. But the longer he waits, and with this legal tampering now opening here, I think it becomes more and more possible that Atlanta. Yes.
Okay, I'll just roll my eyes when you say stuff like off-ball linebacker and draft capital. But legal tampering is nonsense. And I actually got an alert last night from NFL.com that said the free agency negotiation period is opening. That was from NFL.com. Legal tampering is an oxymoron. If it's legal, it's not tampering. I call it the contact period, from my recruiting days.
Yeah.
You'd have the open window. So I want to wipe that phrase from existence. Contact period, negotiation period. Legal tampering is ridiculous. That's nonsense. And NFL.com, I think, even started to realize, because they didn't call it legal tampering last night either. So I was like, thank you. Maybe we're getting some sanity here. Anyway, please go on.
Yeah. But anyway, it's opening, and that means that you'll have the longer he's available, or, he hits free agency during this contact period, I think the more possible and probable it is that Kirk Cousins ends up with Atlanta. So who knows? I know that there's a lot of hope and want for Justin Fields, but at this point, honest to God, Scott, you could probably get Kirk Cousins and Fields if you wanted. It sounds like Fields is going to be it might even be trending towards a day 3 pick. It's crazy, but there's not a lot of market for him.
Yeah, when you're talking about a backup quarterback, what do you get backup quarterbacks for? If, this musical chairs, it feels like Justin Fields is the one that might be left out of it. And, if they move him, they're going to move him for cheap. And it's something we haven't really thought about, and I just got done posting on Twitter just a few minutes ago, because I did a Kirk Cousins search, and it says, I don't mind Kirk Cousins. And it was Kelsey Orr, I think, who I know on Twitter, said, I don't mind Kirk Cousins as long as they get a first round, maybe a second round quarterback pick. I'm like, there's no way. If they get Kirk Cousins, you're basically saying I have a 2-year window to win. Maybe 3, but 2 to 3 at most. But I'm winning now. I want to win now. I'm not building for the future. This isn't my draft a guy, develop, and move on type thing. This is, I got to win now. And if I'm going to do that, I need best prospect available at a non-quarterback position when I'm drafting at 8. I need as much help as I can do right now. I got to Matthew Stafford this thing, even if it means F them picks, and I got to bring in some other guys. So, but if you're able to get a 4th round pick, a 5th round pick for Justin Fields, and a lower money, now you'd have $50 million poured into your. Actually, no, because it's his base salary. You would just be paying his base salary. Justin Fields' cap hit for this year would only be 3, and then. Do you pick up his the thing with that is, do you keep with only 1 year left on his deal? Do you pick up his 5th year option then? That's
no. You probably just let him. He probably just let him. I mean, he might even get more on the market, the comp pick back wise, if he has something happening there than the 5th year option's worth. So you definitely don't pick up the 5th year option. But I know the Chad is going to be more pro Fields than Cousins at this point. But right now, it does not seem that's the way the wind is blowing. But we'll see it. With Fields also being thought of apparently so low on the market on the whole. Before we were talking about, getting Fields costing you a couple day 2 picks, that's a commitment to him. Now I'm wondering if, bringing in Fields doesn't keep you from going after a rookie quarterback there at 8 or even trading up, because it's not going to cost you a lot. And I'd not come in with another contract or that 5th year option. I would be shocked if you extend that 5th year option at this point.
Yeah,
so that door opens too.
I've said that from the beginning. I don't want him with this 5th year option, just because I don't want to Sam Darnold this thing. If it doesn't work, I don't want to be tied to $20+ million of quarterback. And there are certainly some red flags around all these guys. We know that, and there's going to be some consternation, no matter who it is at quarterback. Kirk Cousins, he's old, he's broken, he's expensive. Justin Fields, he can't throw. I've been through all these before. The options that are available at quarterback, there are a lot of them, but they're available because there's some red flags there. Mm-hmm. Now, we go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday because we like having the chat. So I want to say good morning to some folks that come in nice and early, like John Brooks. He says, "Good morning, Scott. I have a question. Do you think the Falcons will end up signing either Kirk Cousins or trading for Justin Fields today?" Today, well, would they do that today? Well, they can't sign him today. It would be Wednesday. Would they announce it possibly today? And if you are the Chicago Bears, are you more incentivized to wait and see who misses out on a quarterback, or do you want to try and get in early to make that trade? I don't know that you want to be playing musical chairs with Justin Fields right now.
I honestly don't know what the Bears do. Is it possible they even keep Fields at this point if the market doesn't allow good return on him? I mean, you probably can't do that with the locker room dynamics. There's the human element. This isn't Madden, just names on a screen, computer generated. But yeah, it's going to be difficult without a question. The other thing is, we talked about on here a lot. Fields has been injured as heck during his career. So if you bring him in, I mean, you probably need to bring in an additional quarterback, or, be confident with who your backup quarterback is as well, because he's missed so much time in the NFL so far. But going to be very interesting to see what happens. I don't think. Also, there's other options. I mean, we talk draft pick, Cousins, Fields, but I mean, there's a possibility that you miss out entirely on the guys you want this cycle, and you end up signing a Jacoby Brissett, a Ryan Tannehill.
I think you go draft. I think it ends up going like JJ McCarthy if you miss out on the guys.
But timeline wise, you'd sign somebody first, and then you're a little bit up to you don't have the ability to dictate the draft. If the Giants want somebody,
on a $9 million $7 million in cap savings with Taylor Heineke. So no reason to keep him. I'd rather send 5 at somebody else and save a couple bucks probably.
Agreed. But timeline wise, you're going to have to do something at the position before the draft. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. You're not in a bad position by any means. You have all that extra day 2 capital this season. You're sitting there at 8, but definitely watching to see what happens with, now that Mayfield is back with the Bucs. Sounds like New England's penciled in for quarterback at 3. Depends on if they like Daniels and May the same, or McCarthy. We'll see. And also, there's been a lot of growing chatter that the Giants are very much wanting to take a quarterback.
We've said that for a while. I mean, they made a 2-year commitment to Daniel Jones. It was big money, but they can move in there for that. Jeremy Sean comes in. He says, "Morning, fellas. No Russell Wilson, who is going to the Pittsburgh Steelers on a veteran minimum for a 1-year deal. The Broncos will pick up the freight on that." And Interesting that he's going to be going with Arthur Smith. So I read something today. It's like, oh, Russ is washed up. Who would want Russell Wilson? Well, there's lots of people that would want Russell Wilson. This was from what's the guy's name? Because I copied the link. It was Coach Ralco2, Recalto on Twitter. He says Russell Wilson accounted for 29 total touchdowns in 15 games in 2023. Steelers quarterbacks accounted for 10 touchdowns in 17 games. Yes, Russell Wilson can help you. Yes, Russell Wilson can help the Atlanta Falcons get better. Yes, he can help the Pittsburgh Steelers get better. For all the teeth gnashing about Russell Wilson, it was more about, the contract. Well, he's coming in for free. For free. He's still an average quarterback in this league. And when you're playing at bottom 5 level of quarterback, average is a big, big improvement. Me, Jeremy, and for everybody, there's lots of questions in here. Do I prefer Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins? I prefer Justin Fields. I prefer the cost on Justin Fields with the upside and the youth and the ability to build a team around him, where with Kirk Cousins, I feel like your only avenue to improve really then becomes, now I can still do some in free agency, but not nearly as much as if I have Justin Fields. But my only avenue to improve, and that isn't always right away, is in the draft. So it's Kirk Cousins, the current roster, and the draft, or Justin Fields, $50 million, and the draft and the current roster. I like the Fields option better. I really do.
Yeah, you won like one too many games really to dictate those kind of options there. I mean, who knows what the Broncos will do, but the Vikings, the kicker here is that if the Vikings are in the quarterback market, it probably means that you signed Kirk Cousins. And if you don't sign Kirk Cousins, it's probably that he ended up going to the Vikings. So really that domino is going to dictate a lot for what happens with the Falcons in their quarterback market. And one of the more aggressive suitors would want to keep an eye out on, like we mentioned, the Giants. Also, it sounds like the Raiders really want to be aggressive. I think that, given Antonio Pierce's connection to Jaden Daniels, if he were available, they might make a move on him. But who knows? Quarterbacks could be going 1, 2, 3. Do you like McCarthy enough? Is it May that slips? We're still far enough out. And the Falcons are going to be aggressive. I think one reason you do want Kirk Cousins from the ownership perspective is just the stability, because every single other option, it's like, okay, we bring in that guy, but now we have to go get that quarterback as well. What does that look like? Because we're in a roster building standpoint right now where we can't, transition season. We can't just, Carson Wentz versus Desmond Ridder it here. It has to be with some direction and vision, which Kirk Cousins does that. And I don't think anybody else does in terms of the stability and vantage point for a 2 to 3 year window. So
Channel 404 comes in with a super chat. He is asking the same question. Finally get to see Scott and Nick live. Well, welcome in. Appreciate you being here. He says Kirk Cousins or Justin Fields. And again, for me, for those reasons, it's Justin Fields. The injury, I know we've talked injuries, but we're talking about injuries with a young man versus injuries on an old man. And a season ending on an Achilles. Now, Kirk Cousins is mobile, but he's not a runner. That doesn't mean he can't move. He is a mobile quarterback. He's just not a running quarterback. Justin Fields, if he takes that part out of his game, is he nearly as dangerous? He still has a high caliber arm, to stretch the field. His arm's amazing. So Justin Fields can win from the pocket. Does he start protecting himself a little bit more? But again, for me, it's Justin Fields just because of the pieces that I would then still be able to put around him. I could make my overall team better with Justin Fields. Now, the question is you end up like you did last year with Desmond Ridder. Well, we tried to build a good team around him, and the quarterback play was so bad. And I always say quarterback play, because Arthur Smith was involved in this too. The quarterback play was so bad that it didn't matter what the rest of the team was. You still were 7-10, and really, against a league average schedule, you probably weren't even 7-10. You were probably like 5-12. You regressed. So I want to build the team up still, because I don't think Kirk Cousins is the definite answer. I don't think he's a for sure. Or I'd say, yeah, man, this team's a quarterback away. Let's get the quarterback. We've got the money. Get him. Plug him in. Be done. I don't see that. Like, let's say Brock Purdy was really, really struggling, and you look at that 49ers roster, they should be $40 million on Kirk Cousins. Yes, please. Plant him right in there. I'm winning a Super Bowl. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you see where I'm going with this. So for me, it's Justin Fields, Nick.
Yeah, I don't know what the NFL does not just seem to value him right now very much. I think the issues with the injuries, protecting the football, not taking sacks. Now, we talked about Kirk Cousins' fumbles last time, and also the ability to operate on time over the middle of the field. What we can take away from the Kyle Shanahan and the Sean McVay stuff is it's very much a timing-oriented drop back West Coast offense and not one that is predicated so much on broken plays. So I do wonder if there is going to be want and fit there for the Falcons. Maybe if he's so cheap that it's like, okay, we're giving up a 4th round pick. There's so little downside there that we might as well take a shot. But I'll be curious to see. I don't know how much we've talked about it on here also, but given, Zach Robinson's connection and whatnot, if you do miss out on the Kirk Cousins bigger quarterbacks, I wonder, I'm sure somebody's linked it to the Falcons because it just makes sense. But as a bridge, guys, I know the chat's going to roast me for this. This is a setup to go be aggressive for a quarterback in the draft. But Carson Wentz for like a cheap 1 or 2 year deal because he's been in LA. He looked actually pretty good last year in a spot start with the Rams. He can come in. He already knows what Robinson wants to do. So that's something where that's the ideal bridge / backup quarterback, I think, just because there's familiarity. And as we talked about on all of our shows, Scott, not what you know, it's not what you've done, it's who you know in the NFL. It's those connections. So I'm curious if there's going to be any interest there if you've missed out on the Kirk Cousins sweepstakes, again, as a prerequisite to the draft, not as the option, but a prerequisite.
Yeah, going in, I still want to go into the draft. Edward Brown comes in with a super chat. Thank you, Edward Brown. Says, dream scenario, 3rd for Fields. Might not even be a 3rd. You can keep dreaming. Dream a little bigger. Sign Danielle Hunter at edge. Draft Dallas Turner in the 1st round and get Xavier Worthy, the wide receiver, in the 2nd round. I feel like that's what we did in our last mock draft, Edward. I think we went that way in our last mock draft. That's a dream, and the thing is it's realistic. That's not out of the question because you could do all that and still have $40 million in free agent money, in salary cap money. You could do all that because you could knock Danielle Hunter's 1st-year cap number down to 10. Mm-hmm. And you're looking at $51 million right now before you make any other moves. And there's a discussion here I saw. I don't know if it was Michael Lewinsky or whatnot, but there was a discussion here about Richie Grant and his salary being guaranteed. Now, it's different. Nick, you can explain the rules to me on this, but I think it's basically, I don't know how to explain it. It's like it's an option, but it's not fully guaranteed unless they play. So it's set up where the 4th year on his 2nd year has a specific amount, but it's not guaranteed. You don't have to take it, and it's not on the same deadline. So if they cut Richie Grant, you save $3 million. So Richie Grant, to me, is going to be a casualty of his contract because I'm not paying Richie Grant $3 million right now, Nick.
Yeah, maybe you can do something. He's one of those guys that I probably hold on to until the draft because you might be able to do something where you flip Richie Grant and a 7 to move up, 20 picks into the middle of the 6th round. And that can give you a little bit of value there. So essentially he's the value of a late day 3 pick right now, but that's still somebody might want to take a chance on him. I mean, heck, maybe it's him going to Jacksonville to follow Nielsen out there. So he's somebody that you definitely don't want starting. We were much more impressed with Heilman. Who is the safety?
Marco Helms.
Helms, yes. Helms last season.
I get my big safeties mixed up sometimes doing Broncos between Skinner and Helms.
And also the safety market right now is so darn cheap that you could probably bring in somebody for pretty darn cheap. I mean, heck, I'm sure Jesse Bates is feeling pretty good that he got his money last season because this year he might not be getting that as much given the saturation of the market. But this is fun.
I could drop and Gabriel Rodriguez over on Facebook. Thank you for looking that up for me. It's $3.9 million to keep him, and then you save 3.1, so you take an $800,000 dead cap hit. Okay, done. I think Richie's in trouble. I'd rather spend 8 on Justin Simmons. Just double Richie Grants and bring in Justin Simmons next to Jesse Bates, and that would be a lot of fun. That would be a hell of a back end of that defense. And someone asked me, I don't remember who it was, maybe Roderick, was like, strong side, free safety. I'm like, those are kind of interchangeable to me these days. I almost feel like there's not even a FSSS position anymore. They move those guys around so much. It's just safety. Yep. And Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates are certainly capable of playing anywhere, in the middle of the field at that safety position. And Keith Johnson coming in with some stars real quick, Nick, and let me do this and then keep that thought. Said if the Vikings sign Cousins, do the Falcons go for Fields or draft a quarterback? And Keith, thank you for the stars. I like Nick's idea. You can do both then. It's not like you're sending a second and picking up a fifth-year option on Justin Fields. You need options, and Justin Fields doesn't have any. Russell Wilson had options. Russell Wilson probably got assurances that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to be a big player trying to trade up for a rookie quarterback. He had options. Justin Fields doesn't have any. He's still on his rookie deal, no trade contract or anything like that. So he's at the mercy of the Chicago Bears and whoever trades for him. And if I'm sending him a 4th-round pick and I pick him up, that does not preclude me from going J.J. McCarthy at 8 or something along those lines. So that's something we hadn't really, really considered. I mean, we considered it, but I kind of dismissed it, and Nick's talked me into it today.
I mean, we always thought that it would take, multiple day 2 picks to make that deal happen. And the market is just not dictating that. So I think there's a possibility that you could do both in that regard, especially because Fields is kind of short term, right? At this point. So who knows? We're going to keep following it, of course, but everything is on the table. We just need to see what happens with the Kirk Cousins domino. And I think Atlanta's very much a player here for that. So we'll find out in the next 48 hours. I think do you think we'll find out about Cousins' contract before the contact period closes? Excuse me, I don't want to use the right terminology.
Before that closes? Yeah, I do.
So it could be any minute now. I mean, it really could be any minute.
The Vikings have until Wednesday. If they get him an extension before Wednesday, they do not take that cut. They've got 28 million reasons to pay more than anybody else. I mean, he's going to cost me $30 million if he's not on my team. All right, let's split that in half. And I'm going to give you, if you're getting 40 from Atlanta, I'll give you 55 because it still saves me $15 million to give him 55. Yeah, you're talking me out of this one too. And Jeremy, always good on the play on words. Russ to Pittsburgh for $1.2 million. What a steal city in the Steelers. I want to say hello to Michael Ronquillo for a couple of reasons. One, because he's always here and we love him. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. But I actually saw the Russell Wilson news from Michael this morning when I fired up Twix this morning. So I saw him post and I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. Michael doesn't post BS. So I saw that from you, Michael. I saw that from you this morning. Victor Atkins, good morning, Scott, Nick, and Falcons fam. Greg Elrod, morning, guys. I'm ready for my favorite sports show. Bring it. Good to have you. Silas is here as well. Real Shaggy, we've hit the rumors of Kirk's for sure. DeKing, he says, this is a newer name. Appreciate you being here. He says, I can guarantee one thing. The whole coaching staff, Terry Fontenot, are working overtime this whole week. Yeah, I slept in. I took a little bit of an advantage of the spring forward and slept in until about 7:45 because my cats weren't jumping on my head at 6:30 this morning. Feed us. And it's the wrong day to sleep in. It was. The news was already catching fast and furious. Michael Dubb, good morning all. Good morning. Corey Ellison, good morning, Falcons fam. It's been a minute. Just had a little girl, and that's awesome. Congratulations. Congrats. Being a girl dad is really, really awesome. But now I'm back in the swing of free agency. Let's go. Good to see you. Andre says, good morning, Scott. And this guy, Blue Cheers. I'm guessing he's for the Blue. They play today. Hopefully they won't stink it up too bad. Jordan Brown, good morning. I'm glad to see some closure with these quarterback situations. Hopefully we don't Falcon this thing all up. Yeah, you got Baker Mayfield. You got Russell Wilson. Those two are the first of the dominoes to fall. The big one I still think is going to be Kirk Cousins. And, there's some trepidation in here. Where's Ryan in here? Ryan was like, I really wish Kirk Cousins never existed. Go get Fields for a third and draft a quarterback. See, I'm with you on this. I am. But that doesn't mean that I can't get behind signing Kirk Cousins. He's a good quarterback. He is. So yeah. I can see it. Kirk Cousins immediately makes this team significantly better. Is he my number one option? No, he's not. But most of the options the Falcons have are improvements at quarterback because the bar has been set so low, and the team should get better. They should improve. They've won nothing. What quarterback is available that turns this team into a Super Bowl contender? There aren't any, but you got to play the games, right? We're going to cheer and root for them. We're going to watch. We want to see some good football because we haven't seen a whole lot lately. I want to see my team get better. I'd love to see them win a Super Bowl, but if my prerequisite for watching the Atlanta Falcons was winning a Super Bowl, I would have quit a long time ago. Mm-hmm. They've never won one. I know you're setting the expectations so low, blah, blah, blah. I know, but I am trying to set expectations here. There's not a quarterback out there that makes this team into a Super Bowl contender. And you might say, well, then go get a rookie. I'm with that too. I'd rather have Kirk Cousins is like my fourth or fifth option, Nick. But he's not a bad option.
Yeah, I agree mostly, but honest to God, I think the pathway in the NFC is so open. And if you just get into the Super Bowl, you got a chance. But if you look, we've talked about it before. I mean, the teams in the AFC, the gauntlets of quarterbacks you have to jump are hard. In the NFC, I mean, who is it? Dak Prescott and the Cowboys?
It's the 49ers right now.
They're falling apart right now, though. They're going to lose Ayuk. They are releasing Eric Armstead.
Is hitting free agency. Eric Armstead's hitting free agency. I think they'll be okay, though. Their core is still good enough.
They're going to be okay, but their window is closing. Without the quarterback, it's really hard. Teams that are not built around the superstar quarterback, they don't have the ability to reinvent themselves as much like we've seen with the Chiefs, different iterations. You have that really good core, and if you don't take advantage of it when it's there, those guys get expensive, they get old, they get injured. You kind of fade away. Kind of seeing that maybe with the Eagles even. So I'm going to push back a little bit, Scott. I think that the Cousins we saw the last 2 years in the NFC on a Falcons team with the offensive infrastructure you have in place could get you into the playoffs and be spicy in the playoffs. And if you get there in the NFC, I don't think the pathway is impossible to get to the Super Bowl. And if you get in, if Nick frickin' Foles can win a Super Bowl against Tom Brady and the Patriots, Kirk Cousins can win one too. I know he hasn't won one in his career, but he's also had the Aaron Rodgers Packers hurdle out there as well. And also, I mean, Zimmer, maybe not the best head coach at the same time also. I mean, the best 2 years of his career have been the last two. And I have the data here, Scott. I can't pull it up, but I had to tweet it out because I think we got to call it cognitive dissonance, but people on the internet are wrong, and I cannot stand that. So if you want to pull up my tweet there, I can click on the data. I have it in the share field, but I can't. There we go. So here's the Justin Fields injury risk. If you guys can see that at home, 89% chance of history. Let's see the list of injuries so far in his career. Oh my goodness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hip, AC joint, shoulder, thumb, knees. Okay, that's not great over a 4-year sample size.
On a young guy.
And now we have Kirk Cousins. Oh, wow. 2 injuries, 6%, very low risk. Now let's look at that. Since 2009, he just had his first injury since 2009. Now the kicker, yes, it was an Achilles, and that does a lot of heavy lifting there because if he doesn't pass the medical checks with an Achilles, don't sign him. Duh. Of course, the medical team has to give the okay. But the talk that Cousins is this injury-prone guy when the juxtaposition is then let's go get Fields because he's not injury prone. What? That's just categorically wrong.
I don't think it really has anything to do with Fields and the injuries. Right now, it's just people don't want Fields because they don't think he's a very good quarterback.
Yeah, but I mean,
that's what it boils down to. It's not. I don't want Cousins because of the injury. Okay, but that's not why I want or would not want Fields. Fields. The question is, can he play in this league? That's why people are out on Fields. People are out on Cousins because he hasn't won any big games. Being with the Washington and the Vikings, he's expensive, he's old, and he's coming off a season-ending injury as a mid-30s guy. Those are all scary. I get it. I do. But Ryan says, amazing the Patriots are not on the amazing Kirk Cousins train since Cousins is so great. If the Atlanta Falcons were drafting third and had a team that was bad enough to get them the third overall pick, we wouldn't be talking Kirk Cousins either. There's no reason for the Patriots to be in on a $40 million free agent quarterback who's in his mid-30s. Zero, none, zero. None. I honestly can't believe it was even a discussion at all anyway. Patriots have to go quarterback with one of the top 3 picks in the draft. And if the Atlanta Falcons were in the top 3, I would just rail on anybody that talks about anything other than quarterback in this draft. I'd say you're out of your mind. Just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. I don't care if you think Desmond Ridder can be improved and you think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the next Julio Jones. I don't care. I don't believe it in Desmond Ridder. You've got to get a quarterback. So there's no reason for the Patriots to ever be talking about Kirk Cousins right now. It's apples and oranges.
Yeah, the thing I would say is that it could be a trade back situation there if you didn't love the quarterback and you let's say you had Bo Nix rated about as high as you had Jaden Daniels, and the Raiders are offering 3 first-round picks to move up from 13 to 3, and you can still get the guy that you grade higher than Daniels. So there is a chance of a trade back, but you didn't toss that in as well. So I just wanted to say that door, I think, is still open. I can't imagine, though, it being a non-quarterback sticking there at 3. There's not a Myles Garrett caliber prospect in this class that would. And I'm Scott, I've been banging the drum of the value of wide receiver, even though there's a lot of them. Difference makers there are still as valuable as anything besides a pass rusher in the NFL. Just follow the money. Those guys are getting paid more than offensive tackles these days. But that's the
rules have changed. The game has changed.
Yep. Space players, man.
Patsy coming in says Fields can still be molded. Yeah, I still think of Justin Fields as a prospect. He is 1 year older than Michael Penix, than Bo Nix. 1 year. He's still a prospect to me. That's why, I've seen flashes of brilliance from him in the NFL. We have. Now, can you make that into more? I'm willing to risk low cost on it. It's low cost. And then it doesn't keep you from trying to do something else at quarterback too. So again, I like the Fields option because of the different risks that happen. Anthony White, he says the right quarterback for the city is the one who brings the team's wins consistently. That's Cousins right now. You might say that's Justin Fields too. The hometown kid. It depending on where you live, you might not think Kennesaw is hometown, but almost up to Chattanooga, Tennessee is Metro Atlanta these days. So, that might make sense too. Troy, good to see you. Says, I've been taking the Fields talk with a grain of salt, but Scott, y'all have talked me into it. Is Justin going to be able to take snaps under center? Yeah, he could. I don't think it's overly that hard. And again, there are no sure options. No matter what we say, no matter what your opinion is, there's going to be a lot of disagreement. I don't want Kirk Cousins. Okay, I get it. I don't want Justin Fields. Yeah, I understand that too. Part of doing this is taking the good with the bad and seeing all of the points of view and then trying to weigh your options and decide what is the best option for your team. There's negatives on every single one of them. All of them. There's negatives. Maybe I don't want JJ McCarthy, a 21-year-old rookie. He only threw the ball 3 times at Michigan. Honestly, for me right now, JJ McCarthy might be my number 1 option.
Woo! There's a chance that Drake May falls behind him. Because
I'm taking those 3 out.
Okay.
Daniels, May, and Williams. So one of those 4 in the draft would be my number 1 option. I'd be happy with any one of those. That would be my number 1. My number 2 would probably be a mid-round pick for Justin Fields. And then maybe draft Spencer Rattler or somebody later on, Joe Milton in the 6th.
Yeah.
A pick that he can go in. Because Russell Wilson would have been ahead of those guys at $1.2 million. I would have had Russ and would have been my number 2 option more than likely.
Yep. And one more thing I want to hit on before we go, and just talking again about the offense and just where teams are today. I pulled up this tweet, Scott, from Jeffrey Essere, who covers the Broncos and just been digging into the data here. The thing about Fields, and it's the same issue with Russell Wilson. Fields' play style, honestly, is a bigger, faster, stronger Russell Wilson right now, but he really struggles in the down-to-down consistency in the quick game. And with where defenses are playing now, Scott, if you can pull up the graphic here, because I can't click on it, unfortunately. If you guys can see that at home, not to be too nerdy on this, but this is your average yards per completion. That's on the y-axis. The x-axis is by the year. Look at the drop in terms of completion. We are at a historical low on that. Now, what is the reason for this, Scott? It's things we've talked about a lot on this team, on these podcasts. Teams are playing the Vic Fangio style too high defense a lot. They're playing a lot of nickel defense on early downs, and they are playing more off coverage. They are making you work the middle of the field and work the check down. And that is something that Fields and Russell Wilson and a lot of these broken play quarterbacks have struggled with. And that is counter to what we've seen a lot of the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, where they really emphasize putting linebackers in conflict with the play action, with the different looks, with the crossers. So again, maybe Fields is a good enough fit here, but there's just some stylistic things with where the NFL is at right now, as well as what my perception is of what the Kyle Shanahan tree has done, that I don't know if it fits as well. So I'm curious your thoughts on the data here with issues with the offense and a Fields fit.
And I want to get into this on Wednesday, y'all. And frankly, make sure you hit the likes and the subscribes, because if something breaks this week, we're going live. We will absolutely go live for a gut reaction. We might be here tomorrow, depending on what happens today. We'll be back on Wednesday for sure. Right here, this graph tells me there's a course correction coming in the bonkers numbers for quarterbacks, and I don't need to spend a quarter of my cap on quarterbacks because anybody can make those throws. That's what it tells me. That there's going to be a course correction coming, and I don't need to put a quarter of my money into the quarterback position, where 15 and up are taking up 20% or more of the cap. I think there will be more. The guys at the top are always going to make the most. That's never going to change. Mm-hmm. I think middle-class quarterbacks, I think there's going to be a course correction where they're not making $45 million as the number 15 quarterback in the league.
Baker Mayfield says a little bit differently yesterday, but I'm
30.
With you.
Yeah, was he 30? Yeah. So you're talking closer to 10% of the cap? Okay.
And he's only the 17th highest paid quarterback in the league with that contract.
But I think it's coming. What that tells me is I don't need, if I'm just going to be dinking and dunking, I don't need to put 25% of my cap into the quarterback.
The issue is doing so in a way that is still explosive, and the way to hit those windows where there's opportunity for yak. So there is still manipulation, timing, placement, and the pre and post snap recognition that can then create explosiveness. Now, some of it can be schemed up, of course, and if you have the weapons on the outside, you can do that. But again, just with where the NFL is at right now, the broken big play quarterback, to have that ability, yes, of course you want it. And if I'm drafting a quarterback early, if they don't have that projectability with the arm talent, the size, the athleticism, I'm not going to be interested in them with a premium pick, because I need the ability to do that as well if I'm spending a premium. But the ability to work the reads, work the offense, work the middle of the field, put those linebackers in conflict with where defenses are at right now, that is where you have to take advantage of functioning of defenses and to work a functioning offense. And I am curious if Fields is thought to be able to do that. And with the data we have there and what we're hearing about his market, I don't think that teams think he can do that. So I'm going to be very curious, Scott. But those are all things that really I think need to inform us and make us think about where the game is at right now. Because in the back of my mind, Justin Fields is still a young, talented quarterback. I would have been okay giving up a second-round pick for him. Okay, that's not the case. The league is not viewing him that way. Why? The injuries, plus the ability to play on time.
Yeah, we'll see.
I guess we'll see.
That's what the perception is right now. We'll see. I'm going to rapid fire these, and then we're going to get out of here. But like I said, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get the alerts, because we will go live. Just like we did when Raheem Morris was hired. We were live within 5 minutes of that announcement. I'm going to rapid fire these because I love these questions and points, or either that or I hate them. And I want to make sure I want to correct it. Brad Clark, I think Cousins has a better arm, but Fields has better mobility. Fields definitely has better mobility, and Fields has a howitzer for an arm.
He's better arm.
Cousins is 10 times. He's a 6'3" version of Matt Ryan. He has 10 times the accuracy. He's going to knock a dime off a teacup. He's a much more accurate passer, a much better throwing quarterback, but Fields has better mobility, et cetera, et cetera. Ryan says there's no way Terry Fontenot ruins a cap. He has worked his ass off just to blow it on a 36-year-old Kirk Cousins. I agree. That doesn't mean he won't sign Kirk Cousins. It'll just be 1 year, basically, where he's committing big money for it, and then 1 year that he could get out of it with a dead cap of 10 to 15, which isn't that bad. So I agree. He won't ruin the cap, but that doesn't mean he won't try and sign Kirk Kirk Cousins. Nick has popped off. We're going to go over to Mile High Huddle, and we're going to talk more quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, et cetera, et cetera. Pamela's out on Kirk Cousins or on Justin Fields. 10 wins in 3 years. No, thank you. And this is another one of the big ones. Nick, go ahead and jump off and get us started on Mile High Huddle, and then we'll get going. Then there are a couple more here I wanted to say. INFJ Tyrone, Atlanta could have had Lamar. No. They could not have had Lamar. No way in hell. Forget it. They had as much chance at Lamar Jackson than they did as Patrick Mahomes. Lamar Jackson was not leaving Baltimore. Full stop. I will criticize the hell out of this franchise that has been more down than up for 60 years. But this is not true. That is not true. Not true. They were not in on Lamar Jackson. They could not have had Lamar Jackson. No one other than Baltimore was going to get Lamar Jackson. I think that was about it. Let me see here. Ryan Adonis says, why don't the Broncos sign Cousins with all the love he is getting? Because you're again, Brian, this is all apples and oranges. The Denver Broncos are shedding salary cap space in order to absorb Russell Wilson's dead cap hit, and they are going tanking for 2024. That's why. Apples and oranges, brother. The Falcons have a good roster. Kirk Cousins makes them a very likely playoff contender. Is he the number one option? Not for me. He was what? At best, fourth option for me. One of the top 4 rookies would be number 1 for me. Russ and a draft pick would have been number 2 for me. Justin Fields and a mid-round pick is number 3 for me. Kirk Cousins is probably number 4. All 4 of those options make the Atlanta Falcons better in 2024 than they were in 2023. That's the good news. And when this happens, and when these guys get signed, when this happens, when the Falcons get their quarterback, I want you to focus on that, not the negatives, because every one of these guys has negatives. There's going to be a large contingent that's going to be unhappy because every one of these guys has red flags. Every one of them. Every one of these guys on paper makes this team immediately better. Might not be your number 1 choice, but there's reasons to like it. On that note, we are going to get out of here. I appreciate y'all showing up. We'll be back again. We could go live right away at any instant over the next 48 hours, but we for sure will be back Wednesday morning. We look forward to seeing you. Thanks for hanging out. Y'all have a hell of a week.